Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Henry Gillis, the Regional Watershed Coordinator for the Connecting Our Waters program of the Foxwolf Watershed Alliance in partnership with the Waterways Association of Menominee and Shawano County. Today, I'm recording this webinar to talk to you about planning your native plant project. We originally had this scheduled for August 8th, but due to COVID concerns and social distancing, we canceled that, and now it is a webinar. So hopefully I do a good job. We'll see. So thank you for tuning in. What we're going to talk about during this presentation is the importance of native plants, what a rain garden and a shoreline restoration are, and then whether you're applicable for one or the other. Designing your project, talking about the different variables that go into that. Maintenance of the project, some local resources, and then some of you can be done at that point. Otherwise, I'm going to go through a little bit of information about a dichotomous key, and then at the end, I've got my contact information. So, why do we choose native plants? Why do we push native plants? Why do you see so much of that going on? Well, roots are one of the really big things. As you can see from this really neat picture, native plants have very deep roots. These roots help with water infiltration, they help with stabilizing soil, and they really they help everybody. They help the soil microbes, and then they help, like I said, with the water. As you can see from this diagram, we have non-native plants on the left and native plants on the right. Fescue grass, we're just going to assume is lawn grass. It doesn't even have roots that go down a foot. Some of these other non-natives have a little bit deeper roots, which is nice. But then when you compare them to these native plants, you can see, 7, almost 16 feet on this common 9-bark. That just helps with decrease in soil compaction, increase in water infiltrating, and just better soil stabilization. So much of the pollution that is reaching our streams is just from soil runoff. So these plants really help with that. The other big thing that native plants provide is habitat. So you can see these are all really, in my opinion, pretty pictures of native plant projects, and they provide great habitat for bugs, bees, butterflies, birds. This one on the top left is at Glass Coffee, and they've seen turtles laying their eggs, and they're not the only ones. Muskrats, otters, all of these animals love having native plants for protection and things like that. So, moving on of why you should use native plants, but now we're going to talk about project type. So, rain gardens are the first one we're going to discuss. What is a rain garden? A lot of people aren't really sure. A lot of people think that rain gardens have water pond in them, and we're gonna bust that myth. So what a rain garden does is it captures the runoff from roofs, sidewalks, and driveways. What you do is you point your downspouts directly into them, as you can see in the lower left corner. That's a really great example. And what a rain garden does is it allows for 30% more infiltration than regular lawn. It creates habitat and a food source for wildlife, as I mentioned before. And then back to this water ponding thing. So a rain garden is designed to allow water to infiltrate in 1 to 2 days. And mosquitoes, which everyone is concerned about with rain gardens, they need 7 to 12 days to hatch. So if you have ponding or anything in your yard, one, you want to put the rain garden above that to catch that before it can pond. But then 2, you're going to eliminate those mosquitoes being able to lay their eggs and hatch in your yard because of these rain gardens. The other project we're going to discuss are shoreline restoration projects. So all 4 of these pictures are from the same site, so you can see the progression of how a site changes from like its inception to 5 years later. So similar to rain gardens, shoreline projects slow down runoff from the landscape to allow greater infiltration. They provide habitat and a food source for wildlife. They help stabilize low energy shorelines. So A lot of people will put in riprap or seawalls on lakes or rivers where there's energy that keeps eroding their shoreline. Well, native plants will help stabilize that, and you can use other tools to help with that, like biologs and some other more natural products. And then they also add natural beauty. Some people disagree. They think it looks kind of wild, but in my opinion, I think it just adds a beautiful aesthetic to these shorelines. All right. So those are the two types of projects we're going to talk about. Obviously, just adding native plants to your gardening around your house is great. This is just more focused on those water capturing type projects. So let's talk about designing your project. This seems to be where a lot of people sometimes get stuck. So soil and sunlight are the two big drivers in these types of projects. Knowing what type of soil you have changes sometimes what kind of plants you can have. So I've listed the 5 different types: dry mesic, wet mesic, and wet. You know, a plant like a cattail needs wet soil where, you know, a cactus needs dry soil. That's the range that we're looking at here. And, you know, if you were to flip-flop where you planted those, it wouldn't work. So knowing what type of soil you have is very important. I know you can take a sample of your soil to UW Extension and they'll tell you exactly what you have. I would check out their website for more of that. Otherwise, you can contact me and I can help you contact the right people. Sunlight is the other big driver. So making sure you're picking the right types of plants. When looking at plants, full sun is 6 or more hours of sunlight, partial is 3 to 6 hours, and shade is 3 hours or less. Obviously, no plant will survive if it doesn't have sunlight. So you can't just plant stuff and hope it grows if there's no sun. And the other thing is, if your plant is kind of on the edge of one of the options, it may take a little longer to thrive if it's not getting its prescribed sunlight. Plant height and blooming period is another thing that a lot of people sometimes forget to take into consideration when choosing their plants and then become unhappy because plants get really big. So one thing to really note and push, native plants vary greatly in height, right? You're going to want to choose plants that fit your needs. So, you know, if you have a lakeshore property and you want to be able to still, you know, see kids swimming in the water or something, you may want to choose some shorter plants where on the sides you may want to put some of your taller plants. Or, you know, if you live on a steep slope, maybe the height of plants doesn't matter as much, and then you can, you know, pick basically whatever you think sounds pretty. So you also need to be aware that plants may grow taller than expected. So, you know, if a plant says that it's going to grow 1 to 3 feet, you know, you might get 4 feet. Or if something says it's going to grow 5 feet, you may get 7 feet. They're native plants. If they're happy where they are going to grow. Also, native plants are a bloom from April to October. And so trying to pick plants that will bloom all season is very helpful. Generally, most of our plants hit their peak bloom July through September, so that's when you're going to get the most flowers, but still trying to make sure you have some flowers going all year long is nice for you and the pollinators. So I have an example to show you of why plant height can be important. So on the left, you can see prairie smoke. It's a cute little plant. It's got these fun wispy pink flowers. And it usually blooms April to June, and it grows to maybe a foot tall. And then you can see on the right, big blue stem, it blooms from July to October, and it grows upwards of 7 feet tall. And they grow in very similar habitats, similar sunlight, similar soils. So really paying attention to that growing height can be important, because you could have something that's 1 foot or 7 feet tall. The last thing to talk about when you're planning your native project is site prep. So you prep the sites similarly, but a little different. So if you're thinking about putting in a rain garden, first you need to determine the appropriate size of your rain garden to capture the runoff coming off your roof or your driveway or wherever you're putting it. So there are some options online that you can use. Otherwise, you just want to make sure that you're taking into account how big your roof is, and then the area that may also run off into it. So like if your yard is also sloped that way or something like that. Next, you need to determine the depth of your rain garden. So as you can see from the picture, they have a stake that's 10 feet away from the foundation on the uphill side, and then they have another stake that is downhill. So as you plan your rain garden, you have to make sure that the depth is similar throughout. So you want the sediment on the uphill side to be at the same level as the downhill side. So you do have to dig out that area to make sure it is flat along the bottom, and then that dirt can be used to create a berm on the downhill side. As I mentioned, you need to determine soil and sunlight types. You need to kill what is already present there, so killing the grass, whether that be digging it up, using herbicide, or placing like a tarp or cardboard over the grass to kill it. And then, like I mentioned, you dig and create that berm on the downhill side. For your shoreline project, you need to map out the area of your shoreline that you want to add this. It is best to have the depth back from the lake be a minimum of 8 to 10 feet. That has been shown to be the minimum that will really slow down that water and stop it from just straight up entering the lake. It slows it down and lets most of it infiltrate. Again, determine the soil and sunlight type. And then again, kill what is present. So either you cut the grass with a tiller or a sod cutter, you can smother it with a tarp or cardboard, or you can apply herbicide. If you are applying herbicide close to the water, you may need a permit from the DNR. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your practice. So now you've planned your site, you've determined what you want to plant, you've prepped your site, it's time to plant. And I really only wanted to put this slide in there so you could see my cute son right in the middle of that big picture. It's always easier with more people to plant, but these are absolutely projects you can put in yourself. On the right, you see 2 projects pretty quick after they were planted. You see some flowers and stuff, so they had some time to grow, but that's what that first year is probably going to look like. So one of the big things that has been said about these native plant projects is they're low maintenance. And while that is true, it is untrue for the first 3 to 5 years. So with native plants, the rule of thumb is the first year it sleeps. That means you put the plants in, they're not going to grow much, they're just going to kind of stabilize, get their roots in, so you're not going to see a lot of growth. So these are different examples of projects in their first year. You can see they're just small plants. You don't see a lot. They're getting their space. The second year, the project creeps. So that means you'll see growth, you'll see some spread. You may get flowers, you may not. It's going to depend. But so what it's doing in this creep stage is spreading out. It's, getting more prolific within the soil and things. So here are 2 examples of the second year. You can see the plants got bigger and they spread out some, but still you see a lot of mulch and things like that. And then the third year it leaps. So that third year is where you really see that explosion of the plant. You see lots of blooms, you see the plants get really big. Excuse me. And, that's when people are really happy. So when choosing native plants, you have to be patient. So in these 3 pictures, you can see they're in their third year. You see a lot less mulch. You see lots of variety. You see lots of blooms. So it's very important during those first 3 to 5 years to eliminate weeds and invasive plants. You want to make sure you're in there and getting anything out that you didn't plant. So that's a big thing. Once you get past that and the projects really come into its own and it's it's filling up the space. Weeding and things like that are not as time consuming. You want to, in those first 3 to 5 years, replace plants that struggle, so if you plant an area and it's just that plant is not doing well, you can consider moving it to a different area, maybe replacing it. And then you also, if things aren't also taking off, possibly add more diversity in there, things like that. And then you want to be cutting those, well, you don't need to cut the plants, but cutting is an option once you start to get the big stalks and stuff. So my recommendation is to cut in spring. This allows those dead stalks to act as homes for bugs and bees and stuff over the winter. And then come spring, they can, take off and do their thing, but you're leaving a home up for those organisms over the winter. And then once the site has matured, maintenance does become relatively minimal, just a little bit of weeding and some cutting if that's what you want. You don't need to cut. Those stalks will get overtaken by the plants as they grow every year, but sometimes it is nice to just remove that dead growth so you can really see your plants come up. So let's talk about resources to put these types of projects in. Shawano and Menominee both offer resources for rain gardens and native plant projects. Shawano County offers cost share for the 2 practices, and they cover 50% up to $2,500. This program is going to be done in 2021, so if you've been on the fence or considering it, apply now so you can take advantage of that funding and get half of your project paid for by the county. Menominee County also offers cost share for shoreline improvements. They'll cover up to 75% of soft practices. What that means are biologs, native plantings, things like that. And then they'll cover 50% of hard practices. So you can see that picture up in the upper right corner. That's a GeoWeb cellular soil confinement thing. Very technical, I know. But this hill had a lot of very bad erosion, and they were able to place this on there along with the riprap to stop a lot of that erosion caused by just the steepness of the hill and then the wave action coming in. So I've included the contact information for both Shawano and Menominee County. So if you have questions or are interested in putting in a project, you can reach out to them. The other option for funding are the Healthy Lakes and Rivers grants. As you can see from the picture, it includes 5 different practices. So the native plantings and the rain gardens, like we talked about, and then they also can help with fish sticks, rock infiltration, and diversion. So, if you're interested in some of those, that may be an option. Healthy Lakes grants cover $1,000 per practice. You do need to be an eligible organization to apply, so that would be a lake association, a river association, an eligible nonprofit like WAMSCO or the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance. They can apply on your behalf for you to install it. The only thing with this is you do need to submit an intent to apply by September 2nd, and then the application for these grants is due November 1st. The Shawano and Menominee funding is available year-round or until it runs out. So, that is a nice thing that you can apply year-round when you're ready to apply, than sometimes hitting those deadlines. Here are some other resources, some great websites to visit that kind of talk more about it, books that are really helpful, and then on the far right, I've got 3 apps that I find really helpful. I use Picture This a lot if I'm unsure of a plant, and then if it gives me a couple options, I follow up with a book or Google or something to help me identify what I'm looking at. Connecting Our Waters is obviously a resource. On our website, we have links to all of the previous mentioned websites and resources. We also have some handouts that are available on our website, and then contact information for almost everyone we've talked about so far. So if you're not interested in learning about a dichotomous key, that's okay. I'm going to go through how to use one because One of the things we've heard over the last couple years is people plant things in their gardens and then they forget what they planted. So learning how to use that dichotomous key that's available in native plant books will be very helpful. So you can either tune in or tune out. So a dichotomous key, what is it? As you can see, what is it? And so a dichotomous key, I have the definition here, is a key used to identify a plant or animal in which each stage presents descriptions of two distinguishing characters, and then it takes you in a direction until you identify the species. So that can be kind of confusing, so I also put a picture example in. So let's say you're looking at a leaf, and then you decide, is it simple compound, and then that takes you somewhere. Is it serrated or entire? That takes you somewhere, and then simple takes you a lot of places. But what it really means is you're looking at something, it gives you two choices, is it this or is it that? And then you move on through the key, is it this or that, the whole way down. So how do you use the dichotomous key? It's a lot of definitions. They use a lot of words that you're like, I don't know what that word is. So they keep a nice glossary in these books to help you look up the word and then go back to the key. And then once you think you're somewhere, you're kind of unsure where to go in the key, it's nice to then flip to the pictures of what you think it might be or in the direction you're moving, to then kind of picture match and be like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction. Let's see if I can figure this out. I don't recommend solely picture matching. The apps do help with that, but if you really want to make sure you're identifying the plant you're looking at correctly, you should use the key, walk through the key, and then when you get to the species level of that, then you can use the pictures. So I just threw in some examples of words they may throw at you, or different things they might use to help you make your way through the key. So leaf margin, here are a ton of different examples of what the leaf margin may look like in a leaf. You know, I'm not going to talk about it. It's just the variety is huge. Another thing that they use are the leaf position, and they can also use this for other parts of the plant as well. So are the leaves alternate, meaning they obviously alternate up the stem, they're not across from each other. Opposite means the leaves are across from each other, and then world means that the leaves go in a circle around the stem, so they're, you know, it's a whirl of leaves. It's not just one or two. There's more than two leaves in each section. Common flower parts, again, this is just for your reference, to give you a visual. There's a lot of different things. Petals and sepals are probably the biggest thing they're going to talk to you about in those dichotomous keys. And then finally, they may use words to describe the plant like pubescent or glabrose. So pubescent means hairy. It always just reminds me of like a teenager who's just starting to get hair, so they're pubescent. And then glabrose means it's nice and smooth, like the picture. So the next thing we're going to do is walk through an example. And I was really excited about this example because it was kind of an easier one to ID. And then I started practicing and I was like, I don't know how to say the genus name. So please bear with me. You can laugh when I pronounce it. I'm probably going to laugh. But anyways, here's a dichotomous key. The picture is the plant we're going to try to identify. So the first question, you can see 1 and 1 at the top. Is the plant a vine, leaves opposite, fruit with conspicuous, persistent, feathery style? Or is the plant an erect or stemless herb, leaves alternate or basal, fruit with a plumose style? So as you can see from the picture, the plant is not a vine. So we're going to go with the second number 1. So now we move on to number 2. Perianth with one or more distinct spurs or hoods, or perianth without spurs. Now, I don't know what a perianth is, so this is where you're going to go to the glossary. Lucky for you, I looked it up and put a picture in here. So that when they say the perianth, they're referring to both the petals and the sepals. So they're looking at the whole flower itself. So does the flower have spurs or hoods, or does it not? I'm going to say the flower does have spurs or hoods. So we're going to move on to number 3. Flowers regular, red and yellow, or purple, white, or pink, with petals spurred, fruit a group of follicles. Or flowers bilaterally symmetrical, blue, with one long spur, sepal spur, enclosing 1 or 2 petals. So the flower is red and yellow. So we're going to go with that, which takes us to the genus Aquilgia. That's how I'm going to say it. I could say it wrong. The fun thing about scientific names is if you're close, people know what you're talking about. So anyways, Aquilgia. So we get there. Now we flip to that page of the key and we see there's 2 options for this. Is it either flowers red and yellow, spurs essentially straight, or flowers purple, white, or pink without yellow? The flower is red and yellow, which means it's Aquilgia canadensis, or wild columbine. So you see this a lot in the springtime. It really likes being in wooded areas. The other option is that garden columbine. You can find that a lot at nurseries, and it does have those pretty purple, white, or pink flowers, but that is not a native species. It's a cultivar of a native species. So there you go. That was a relatively simple way to use the dichotomous key. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you to all of our partners. Here's my contact information. Please let me know if you have any questions. And that's it. I hope you have a great day.